Whoa, where am I going?
Hmm.
Cool. Right. Alrighty. Alrighty ho. Right. The first question is: are there dangerous thoughts? Now, whenever I ask a question, I put it up to 100% interpretation. I'm not asking, I'm not putting a gun to your head and saying, you have to, think about this, this, and that. Whatever situation you want to put it to, whatever circumstance you're welcome to. But I just ask that you answer the question. So, are there dangerous thoughts, Aaron?
Yeah, of course, whether I think yes, but I think it has to be a moment of being upset or being hurt or something for those thoughts to maybe, trigger in your mind. It's yeah, hands down, yeah. Dangerous thoughts exist.
Okay, 100%. Oh, right. Naya?
Hi, I'm Mia.
Hi.
I'm new. I saw this and I thought it was really cool sounding. Dangerous thoughts. Yeah, I definitely think there are dangerous thoughts. Trigger warning, suicide. Um, Definitely thinking about things that happened to you in the past that can trigger things, or seeing things that can trigger things. Trigger warning again if someone gets raped. I mean, there's so many things, dangerous thoughts that can bring you into a spiral.
Okay, all right. Zach.
Um, Danger is essentially a warning of harm. So, like, something bad's about to happen. That's what it's like to be in danger. So, thoughts that lead to harm or anything negative like that, I would say are dangerous thoughts. Doesn't mean they're bad, just means they're dangerous to have. Yeah, I think that's pretty concise. Yeah.
Okay, we're blowing through this. Mr. Finn.
Um, I mean, any thought, any thought that would have led to something that has physically become dangerous, sure, but I don't think that needs to become so much philosophical. But in theory, because they're only thoughts, and as bad as thoughts can be, they can go dangerous. I think they can also pull us out of dangerous situations. I wouldn't say that thoughts are dangerous. I'd say the actions that come from, like even nice thoughts, can be dangerous. But I'd say no, but not absolutely, of course. Just to say.
All right. Okay. Frank.
I think absolutely. I'm a mental health therapist, and when people start becoming suicidal, they get into a downward spiral, and it gets to the point where like their choices seem incredibly limited, and they don't see any other options. So I definitely think that yes, that thoughts can be very dangerous.
Okay. All right. Randomly true.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone so far that thoughts can be dangerous. And I mean, in a way, like, I can't remember who said it. But I think it might have been Mr. Finn. When you think something through, you might stop yourself from doing something dangerous. But for example, if someone was calling you a name and you thought, oh, I really want to punch them, you might not punch them that first time, but as time goes on, um, they might call you the same name again, and your initial response might just be to punch them, and that would come from that repeated thought. So I guess, yeah.
All right. Hello. Do you understand the question? Were you here?
Yeah. Hello.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, definitely. Thoughts can be dangerous. One of the things that it came to mind when everyone was speaking about, it's that thoughts can become ideas, and we have seen how ideas can affect our behavior. For example, historical ideas uh, about Nazis, for example, that affects the way we think and how we behave in the real world. So those ideas become our mental structure, and one way or another, it becomes a behavior. So if we have a suicidal thought, for example, it might not be harmful the first time, but it becomes over time structural in our mind. So it becomes something that it can become a reality. So those kind of thoughts become an idea that affects our behavior. So yes, it can be a dangerous thought.
Okay. All right. Grimsby.
Hi. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with everyone so far. Yeah, there are dangerous thoughts. Although I think it's more about the mental state and the emotions of the person while they're thinking. Because like the thinking to yourself, I'm useless, right? I would say that and say, I'm fine. I'm not gonna kill myself. But at my lowest point, if I thought that, then I could maybe act on that, and that would not be so great.
Okay. All right. Mellow.
Wow. I have to say I'm very surprised by a lot of the answers. But you know, that's always good. It's interesting to get different perspectives. You still have a choice. No matter what the situation is, you always have a choice. And yes, I've done some stupid things in my life as well. And then upon hindsight, I realized that I had a choice in that scenario and I chose not to take it or take a different one. So, um, yeah, it's tricky. Obviously, nothing's black and white. But I feel like, you know, if we completely take out free will in these kind of scenarios or any scenario, that's just not a good thing. Even if at a physics level, at a quantum, the actual physics of the universe level, free will might not exist. It is very, very helpful for humanity to think it has it. So I think when we start to go the other direction entirely, now, I'm not saying there isn't room for influence. You know, everything influences everyone. I'm influencing you just by speaking, not only in the words I say, but the fact that I'm using the English language is possibly proliferating the use of English. You know, so you have to think about even the metadata of what you do and how you do it influences things. So um, to summarize, influence is a factor, but so is the individual. And I think it's just a balance there, and that's different for everybody.
Okay. All right. Now is the time when we open up, and the rule here is speak first to be spoken over. So, does anyone want to disagree, elaborate, agree with someone, make their point
Yeah,
different?
definitely.
Oh,
With what Mello said, it came to my mind that, yeah, definitely, there's always a choice. There's always a choice when you have options in your life. But when it comes to certain behaviors or when it comes to certain situations, that choice is stripping from the person. I'm going to give you one example. I have been talking with adolescents who have suicidal thoughts, and the feeling that they have about life don't give them an option because they feel terrible, and they go into in this to this abyss. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, abysm, or this black hole, that they don't see any other option, even though the options are there. Don't see it because they feel like life has no meaning, and the only thing that they can think of is not being part of it, and that itself takes from them the option of making it to choose life instead of death. But yeah, it raised in my mind that question, that what about when there is no option, even though there is an option. For example, when sickness is in the door of our life. So yeah, I think that option can be taken away from us, depending on how we feel about things or life itself. Speaking about suicidal thoughts themselves, I mean.
Yeah, I think that goes down to, do your emotions control you or do you control them, and where's the line there? And I'm not, by any means am I saying that it is one way or another. I'm just saying I think that's the where that fundamental problem comes from, is how we
Yeah.
think about our own emotions relative to ourselves.
Yeah.
Frank, it just be no hand raising, all that.
Yeah, 100% want to piggyback off of what Polo was saying. Sorry, mellow ways. I do understand what you're saying. I totally agree with what you're saying. But like what Polo was saying, I had the same idea. Basically, if you see no other way, you see no other option, the things you're speaking of are after therapy or during therapy. You would have to do therapy to get to the point that you're speaking of. But if you have no one there to help you, or no therapist or anything like that, then you're going to feel that way. But it's just really hard. And what in the world was that? You can't know what you don't know. It's just really hard to try to change your way of thinking without something outside trying to help you change it, without an outside influence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I still don't know that I agree, but hey, that's the wonderful thing about conversation, is
Absolutely.
everyone can have a conversation whether they agree or not. So
Frank, you had something to say, man?
So Mello, maybe that is the dangerous.
Oh, you just got muted.
I think two people megaphoned him at once.
Yeah.
Huh?
Sorry, man.
So
Was Frank
Mello, maybe that is the dangerous thought, that I have no choice. Because if you believe that you have no choice, then that is your truth, right? So maybe that is the one dangerous choice is, or
could be. Yeah, I can see. Yeah. Yeah. That's a bit of a mind trip to think of the choice. It's a meta choice, right? Your choice of choices. So
right, because I totally agree with what you were saying, that we always have a choice. But people, like I was saying before about people who are suicidal, they do have a choice, but they don't believe that they have a choice, and therefore for them they have no choice, and that is the dangerous thought.
Right. I
don't think it's always that they don't have a choice. It's that that's the best choice for them. It's a way out. It's freeing. You're no longer confined to what is basically torturing you.
I mean, sorry to say, but are we just kind of theorizing on?
Hey guys.
A mentality that we couldn't possibly.
It's not theorizing for me, but I don't want to get too in depth with it.
It
why?
just seems like somewhere where I don't think we could really go right now. We all kind of sound like we're in an okay place, but these seem like very dark places that maybe we've been to, but other people at this moment are encompassing. They couldn't possibly be there and talk about it so comfortably, at least. Just that's my idea. Just seems like a very difficult subject. A good one though, but difficult to imagine.
And it's when you're living this state of mind, for example, depression. I don't know if any guys any of you have lived it. But when you're in a depression mode, nothing makes sense in your life.
Yeah.
I have, and suddenly it's just not about the choices, it's about the feeling of your life. How do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about even though there's a lot of people around you, you feel utterly alone, and you don't feel like your life has meaning, and that's a dangerous thought by itself. But it's not about the thought, it's about the feeling. How do you feel about life itself, and how do you feel in that moment? So it's kind of the thoughts that generates from that feeling are a result of how are you living life in that moment. And it's depressive, it's depression that you're feeling. It's the way you're living that moment. So I don't think in that moment when we're talking about feelings, it's not about the thoughts or the ideas that you have in your mind. It's how you feel feelings comes into mind.
Yeah.
The feeling comes from the thought, not the other way around.
Okay.
So, okay.
Right. We're
Right.
in agreement, right?
Well,
We're in agreement, but
Yeah,
I don't think
mean,
we'll ever
I
do
still
that.
have some thoughts, but I can't really express them well because I haven't thought through it. So I'm not going to waste the circle's time on something that I haven't thought through well enough. So
right. So
yeah, let's go ahead and move on.
right. So I'm gonna introduce the next question, but there's some new people in here, so I just explain the rules quickly. Because rule number 3, I use a metaphor for, and I should make it more specific, but that's my bad. Right. I pose a question, topic, philosophy, political conundrum, legal, hypothetical, and we go around the circle and we get everyone's opinions and ideas on it. And after that, we open up and we talk about it with no time limit, no constraint. You just talk and all that. And we abide by these rules when we go through the circle, which is rule number 1, a 2-minute rule, meaning like try to keep your point to just about 2 minutes. So you know everyone has time in the circle to express their ideas, and then we can open up. Rule number 2, respect the circle, meaning don't try to argue with someone while they're making their point or interrupt them while we're in the circle. Rule number 3, ask them the guide door, meaning if you want to bring up a religious topic, you're welcome to. Just try. You have to ask the group and see if they come with that and all that. Rule number 4, I always forget this one. I'm trying not to look at it because it's right behind me. Respect when the topic is over, meaning if we're trying to move on with us. And rule number 5, shut up when needed, because needed is often. Right. So, everyone ready for the next question? Everyone excited? Heart pumping? Minds turning? Right. This question.
Did you say that we are not supposed to raise our hands?
Well,
Don't have to.
in the circle, right? It's all based on like where you're sitting on the couch, and then once we open up, it's speak first to be spoken over. So just like find a spot in the conversation when no one's stopping to jump in and all that.
Okay.
Right. So the question is, and you're welcome to ask me to repeat the question if you want to answer it super specifically. But the question is, are people with more intelligence, on average, less happy than people with less intelligence?
Yes.
Are those correlated? Aaron,
People laugh at thought.
I don't think so. I don't think I personally don't think that having more knowledge, or I don't know, as they say, having less knowledge makes you any happier or whatever than the other person. Does I just I don't. That's a really tricky question that's working my brain, but I don't think so. I disagree with that.
okay, all right. Yeah. You muted if you're speaking. There you go.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that is a tricky question. I would say coming from a scholar background, I definitely can say yes. You can be unhappy if you don't find a balance. So this kind of goes back to the first question. It's all about how you see things, your choices. Like I'm so sorry. Mellow waves was saying. So it's all about that. Like when I was in school, I definitely was on both sides. I was the rocker party girl that was friends with everyone, but I was also part of academic decathlon. So it's all about finding a balance, basically.
Okay. All right. Zach.
Yeah, I'd say there is, because a lot of people have come in to agree that there's bliss in ignorance, right? There's not.
Mhm.
There might be research on that. I don't know if there is, but the fact that so many people have just universally agreed upon that kind of says there's a bit of truth behind it. Not necessarily everyone who's smarter is sadder and everyone who is dumber is happier, but I would say it tends to lean to more the more intelligent you are, the more likely you are to be sadder than people who are below average, let's say. That's what I think, anyway.
Okay. All right, Mr. Finn.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the old thing, ignorance is bliss. I mean, is that not what we're pressing on? Sure, I'm sure it goes in a roller coaster of a thing. You know, I'm sure there's been heights of where you've thought to yourself, I'm intelligent and I've got to a situation where I was able to get exactly what I wanted. I am happy. This is what I wanted. And I'm sure there's been lows where you've been intelligent, you didn't get what you wanted, and you felt like you felt like shit. And I'm sure it's went in the absolute reverse. I got what I wanted. This is what I wanted. And people would say, that's not a lot. And you go, no, it's enough for me. But then they go, you're not very smart. I didn't really try. Who cares? I'm happy. I don't think it's so black and white. It depends on what you consider to be intelligent. I know people that think they're very smart, and I would never correct them because they think they are, and they're happy enough being that way.
Okay,
I guess it's perspective. Yeah.
Pat Stark.
I think that one of the curses that we have as human beings is that we're self-aware. And as soon as you are self-aware, compared to animals, which also have a certain degree of self-awareness, but they don't think about their state of mind, if they're happy or sad or whatever. They just act upon their things and do whatever lies in front of them. I think that the more intelligent that you are, the sooner you are aware of the situation that you are in. And well, let's face it, most people are not in situations where in the long run or in the longer perspective of things, they can consider themselves happy. Even if you're married, even if you're in a marriage of 25 years, you look back and there are, of course, certain moments where you were happy. But if you count it all up and if you look at the whole picture, it's hard to say that all those moments that you've spent in those 25 years, you were happy. For all 25 years of them. It's just not happening. And I think there's this quote, I don't know who made it, but it's a very famous quote that when you come above a certain level of intelligence, a certain IQ measure, you start getting less happy. So I think that the stupider you are compared to IQ, the happier you can be because you're not aware of all the things that are going wrong or that are threatening you or all the outside influences that are stacked up against you when you want to do something. If you set yourself a goal, you want to achieve it. If you're stupid, you say, well, that's what I want to do. I go for it. And then when you get it, you're happy. But smart people will see all the things that are threatening to reach the goal and they to do to circumvent them. And well, it puts sort of a brake on your happiness. So I think it's true. The more intelligent you are, the less happy you can be.
Okay. Frank.
Hey, Tonk came in after. So do you want to let Tonk go?
Just Tonk, do you know the question?
Yeah, it was if it's whether or not with more intelligence, people are more depressed, like less happy?
Yeah, it's like on average, are more intelligent people less happy than people less intelligent?
Yeah. I think. Sorry, am I too quiet? Can you hear me?
No,
No,
you're good.
you're good.
All
No,
right, all
you're
right,
good. It's
cool.
good.
I think that I think overall, I think it's what you categorize like intelligence as more important than anything else here, because I think that there's like there is like a certain amount of intelligence required in keeping yourself and like maintaining how you are doing emotionally, and I think that to say if you're more intelligent then you're not doing that, I think feels almost inherently contradictory. I think that if it were to be like more of a I don't know, like not entirely contradictory. I just think that I think that it's using a very narrow lens. I think that like to say that stupid people are happier feels like a way of justifying a place of being miserable. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels like almost like a mini pat on the back. And like I just think that that it's just not like I don't know. I think that I think it's an excuse not to work on yourself more than anything else. But yeah, so that's my opinion.
All right, Frank.
That was a cool point. So I have been studying positive psychology and happiness for over a decade and been teaching a class on it. And I so appreciate the question, but because I've never actually had that question come up. So I am looking forward to doing some studying on it. I remember my mom used to say she wishes that she was dumber because she thought she would be happier. As a therapist, I find that intelligent people do seem to have a tendency to overthink and overanalyze and ruminate and get into these spirals. And so I do think that there's something to that, but I find myself squeamish and saying, and agreeing and saying on average anything, because that's kind of like, I think Zach said, it's kind of an overgeneralization. So I'm kind of abstaining from saying in either direction, because I think that happy people or people of less intelligence are just as capable of being happy. And I think that people of high intelligence also have an opportunity to be happy, but it's more like a high octane engine, but it's like, are you going to use that energy and go in a negative direction, or are you going to use all that power into a positive direction? So it kind of goes back to what Mello had said earlier, like it all comes down to choice.
Randomly true.
So I do agree with everyone that categorizing what is intelligent and not intelligent is kind of out there as to how you would define it. But if I were to say it was knowledge, like the more knowledge you have, the more intelligent you are. Generally, people who have more knowledge are more critically thinking, I guess. And say, for example, if there was two people who were going to jump into a lake just for fun, the person who doesn't know about the bacteria that's in the water or the dangers of jumping into a lake from a certain height and that kind of stuff, they'll just jump in and have a good time. Whereas the person who knows all that stuff would be more hesitant and potentially wouldn't jump in. So then I guess from that point of view, like a more intelligent person might stop themselves from putting themselves at risk, but they might be missing out on, I guess, experiences. But in the other way, a less intelligent person potentially might hurt themselves. So, yeah.
All right. Polo.
So yeah, I definitely agree with most of the points of view everyone here has spoken of. But um, yeah, I definitely think that when you have more knowledge, you have more options to wait to become less happier because for example, a baby, when you give them a present, you will notice that they go for the box instead of the toy, and the adult will say, "Oh, how can he choose the box when the toy is what I gave him?" Because the adult is weighing all these options that it's better, that it can make him happy. But the children, the baby will go for the box because that's the option that just naturally came into mind. And what it comes to mind, it's that the more you know, the more you will have to think about the options you have in life. So and when you're not, I mean, I'm not thinking about intelligence itself, but I'm thinking about the cumulative knowledge that we have in our minds as the mm, as the measure with what we categorize an intelligent person. So in a way, the more we have this knowledge, we have to think about our ways in life. And when you do not, you have to uh, go with your gut instinct, with your, with that essential feeling of life that you have to choose whatever way. So yeah, I think people with less intelligence or less knowledge will be more happy in life.
Okay. Right. Grimsby.
Oh, yeah, I definitely think there's some sort of correlation between the more intelligent you are and and the more happiness you can get out of life. Although I would say, as we were talking about, it really depends on how you define intelligence. I'd say it's more about what um, Pat Stark, yeah, Pat Stark, what Pat Stark was saying about self-awareness. Continuing on from what he was saying, children are on average quite a bit happier than most adults I know. Uh, I think mostly, I could be wrong about this, but I think it could be because they don't ruminate on every mistake they make, because they don't really have the either self wellness or the self awareness or the attention span to do so. I spend many nights going over something idiotic I did 5 months ago to a cashier, but I don't think children do that. And maybe it's because they're less intelligent. Maybe it's because of just biological differences from when you were an adult and when you were a child. But I think there's definitely something to be said about being intelligent or being self-aware and how happy you can be.
Okay. All right. Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, this is interesting. I think, yeah, it definitely depends on what you classify intelligence as. As everyone has said, that classic 80s movie, I think we all basically have an 80s movie in our head that defines intelligence, right? The one kid that gets stuffed in the locker versus the jock, whatever. And we all know that that's not true, right? So we all know there's emotional intelligence. And when someone says, I'm intelligent, and yet they are super arrogant, you still want to punch that person in the face, even if they're right. So the point is, um, it all depends on perspective, and it all depends on the mindset that you're willing to put yourself in at the time. Like, I have found myself many times in that spreadsheet overthinking, over analytical mindset where I'm like, okay, but what about this? But what about that? But what about that? And then that just leads, I don't care who you are, that, leads to, in certain situations, that is absolute downfall. But at the same time, you don't want to go and just do something super crazy, because then you'll end up dead. So you know um, I feel like a broken record saying it's all about balance. because that sounds like something someone would just make a Instagram quote on to, like, farm for likes or something, and it's oversimplified, but it's really true. So I think it's but it's not all or the other. Like the person that overthinks can do the spontaneous thing. So really what we're talking about is spontaneity, right? Being able to do the thing that feels right in the moment. So the overthinker can be spontaneous, and the on average spontaneous person can do the analytical thing. It just depends on whether they choose to do that at that moment. So you need to choose which hat to use for the task at hand. I think that's what it boils down to, or at least a overthinker. But anyway,
Right.
and I also don't want to overgeneralize and say on average. I know that was the question, but I don't think anyone can overgeneralize that much. But anyway, okay, 2 minutes. That's me.
Right, Zach. I think you joined midway through the conversation, so we're just gonna open up. Right. Does anyone disagree, agree, or want to elaborate? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I just want to say this is awesome, and it's
Yeah.
so nice to be in lockdown and be able to speak to intelligent humans.
Yes, right.
But I will be
It
back.
is.
Amen.
Next time you guys have this, I have to go eat dinner.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
This goes on for like 2 hours, so you got time.
Oh yeah. Got about an hour and 15 minutes.
We went 8 hours one time, but I'm not doing that again.
Oh yeah, that was like our third event. We didn't really have a time limit, so we just kept going and going and going, and we went from like 7 o'clock to like 2 a.m. something like that.
Yeah, I think it was
close
I
to
can't
that.
do one of those. This finishes at 2 a.m. already for me.
Oh yeah, if you're not in the time zone, yeah. Right. Anyone else want to praise me or elaborate on their point?
You're doing a great job.
So I saw that your Discord, and I have Discord. So I sent you guys a friend request, but I'm not sure if it went through.
Right. I have yet to figure out all of technology. So if you add me on Discord, I'll add you to the server, and the server is how we come up with questions. And you have the ability to reach out to me, tell me you think my event is stupid, or you can, if you have a question that you want to hear in this event, you're welcome to post it in that Discord and all that. So it's just, maybe you disagree with the question I asked. You want to, say that one's stupid, don't bring it up. You're welcome to. It's just all about like communication, because that's all this event is talking, so
yeah.
Right, JVB, what's up?
Hi, I just got in a little while ago. I heard the last two things. I'm assuming the question is, let me see if I can be louder. I'm assuming the question has to do with, does higher intelligence mean higher happiness? Something about that, the equation of that?
In the inverse, that higher intelligence causes less happiness, or vice versa.
Yeah.
I just, as an observation, just right before I came into the headset, I had just glimpsed the silhouette of my husband looking out the window and my cat looking out the window. So in one window, yes. I saw a man silhouette and I saw a cat silhouette, and they were both looking like both thinking squirrel. And I think at that moment, just on that planet, there was this inherent equality, the spark of exactly what was happening without any particular qualifying or quantifying any of it. And then, a couple seconds later, I think they each went into various levels of their anxieties, but for that moment, it was just really quite beautiful and equal.
What a very beautiful observation.
That's fun.
Right. Anyone else? That's it? Everyone agreed? No one wants to call anyone a stinky head or something?
I think that's implied already.
your question.
No, yeah, no. If you're in here, it's a title you're given. Never live it down. Right. So, I'm just gonna give like a quick spark notes. Welcome to Real Talk. If you just came in here and you don't understand what's going on, I pose a question, topic, philosophy, legal conundrum, ethical dilemma, right? And we go around the circle clockwise relative to me, abiding by these rules, getting everyone's opinions, thoughts, and experiences on the question. And it's a good time. But the quick Spartan of the rules. Rule number 1, 2-minute rule. Try to keep your point under 2 minutes when you first go around the circle. We will have an opportunity to open up and speak about it. Rule number 2. Why am I forgetting it? It's because I'm going too fast, right? Rule number 2 is respect the circle, meaning don't try to interrupt someone or argue with someone while they're trying to make their point in the circle. You will be able to make fun of them after we open up. Rule number 3, ask from the guide door, meaning that if you want to bring up a religious topic, you're welcome to just ask the group and see if it's cool and all that. You're not offending anyone by saying this and that and all that. Rule number 4, what is the topic? And rule number 5, shut up when needed, because needed is often. Great. So, some of the questions I asked need a little bit of a background, right? So this question is, if someone is not experiencing life, if someone's in a coma, if someone's deaf, blind, and mute like Helen Keller, if someone, can't participate in society in a meaningful way, right? Can't form relationships, they're suffering in a sense, right? If you can define that as suffering, right? Is it humane to keep them alive? Is it humane to allow them to exist in this how do you say, non-conscious state?
So you can't communicate with them.
If they can't participate in life, they can't grow up, or they can't see, talk, hear, all that at once, or they're in a coma, is it humane to keep them alive and let them continue that existence?
A vegetable.
I
Yeah.
I think that
Okay, just thank you.
if
Oh god.
if I knew someone that was in an either or, positions that you mentioned, I would keep them alive, and some people might disagree, some might agree, but I don't think that there has to be hope. I think I know people who don't see, they're blind, and they don't look at the world as, oh, I'm blind and I can't see, but others can't. But it's just, I guess, the way you think of it mentally. I just, I don't think I have a heart to do that. I know people who've been in situations like that, and sometimes, yeah, it's easier to just, let them go. It might be easier on them. Maybe people think that they're suffering, but I think that there should always be hope before making a decision like that. I don't think that the world ends where you think it ends. I think that's just the beginning of creating another world and creating different techniques to, learn and communicate. That's just personally what I think.
Right? Not
Yeah.
I think it
not you,
depends on
Zach. That's Zach. There's 2 of them.
Sorry, I'm also called Zach. But depending on the situation. So if it's a coma, some comas are induced for medical reasons. Don't just kill them because of that. But also, comas, there's a potential for them to wake up and enjoy life still. So no, not necessarily in that situation. But if it's born deaf, blind, can't feel, can't experience anything from birth, I mean, it's hard to say because we haven't experienced what that's like. They might still have an incredible imagination and live in their own worlds that way. So I can't say, because it might be humane to kill them, it might not be. We haven't experienced it. We can't say. So, coma, no. Up for interpretation, anything else.
Zach with the proper spelling.
Mine's the proper spelling. It's Latin. Okay, sit down. Boy. Mine's the original. You can. That's
Okay.
Zachary. His isn't proper. It's shortened.
Zach.
Jesus. Didn't come here to get disrespected.
Can you hear me? Is it working? Okay. So, if they're, for example, if they are deaf, blind, or they just physically don't have any abilities, they still have a life. They're still in this world. So you might as well keep them alive because they're in this world. You can see them. And some people that are deaf and blind, they grow senses to actually know where they're at. So it's easier to do that. That's really all I have.
I don't mean just murder blind people. I'm saying like if they are equivalent to dead already, like they can only Helen Keller, she could only communicate in such a limited form. She couldn't experience anything. The only thing she had was touch and taste. In a sense where that like it's not a life. I'm not just saying if you're deaf, kill them.
Can I
I'm
get
not saying
a
that.
little bit of clarification? I'm not trying to disrespect Circle, just I think it would help. Are you talking conscious or unconscious? Because I think that's where the difference comes in.
That's a good point.
Helen Keller, while she wouldn't have any sense feeling, she would still be conscious. And like if you did an fMRI on her brains, and Helen would be in there to what we understand currently as being in there. I'm not going to go into like what we don't really know with medical technology right now. But so I think that would be the differentiator. Sorry.
Like a vegetable, right? Did you?
Yeah, like a person who cannot, like, even if they are conscious, that cannot interact with the world.
But they can still think within their own mind.
Yes. They're in a prison of their own fleshy
So
meat.
essentially either unconscious or isolation.
This is like the Metallica music video kind of thing, right?
Can I? Zach's gone. Can I?
Can you?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Oh wait.
Okay. Gotcha, boy.
So, Mellow Waves had a very good point right there, and so did Zach with the English proper spelling.
Latin. That's where you're not from. Your nickname.
Okay, but basically, if they are conscious, they are living a life. They're living their own life. They can still think. Are they mute? Because if they're mute, that changes a lot of my answer.
They are.
They're mute.
It's,
okay,
so they can't interact with the world.
If they like can't do anything in the world, but do they still have like their senses, like touch, taste?
No, they cannot.
Like, at least those
they
two?
are not a part of our world. They cannot experience it.
Okay.
They cannot touch, feel all that.
They can only think of
Okay.
inside their own head or their unconscious.
Okay, well, they're still there. They're still a human. Like, if you were to put them in pain, they would still feel it. It's not like they're some, like, doll or something that you could just cut off its head and it wouldn't even, like, feel anything or anything. They're a human being that's laying in front of you. You can see them. They can't see you, but you can still feel and see them as a person. Even if they are unconsciously living, they're still in life. They're still alive. And they could be having their own world in their own head, and they probably wouldn't want you to end that. How would you feel if you were in your own world, having the best time of your life, and then all of a sudden you're just gone?
You wouldn't feel.
You wouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't know, but still, wouldn't you not want to be taken out of that?
Rule number 2, guys.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Finn.
But yeah, that's the end of my thing.
I megaphoned him twice. My bad.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. I thought there was another person. Okay. I think it's really cool that what we're doing first is we're thinking of the positive. we're thinking that they are in their mind, and we would be stopping something that is active. That's really cool. What we're thinking is the positive thing first, not the opposing that somebody did say they're in a prison in their mind. In a prison is a terrible thing, but a prison in your mind. What a horrible idea. But we went to the positive first. Before, I'm sure somebody'll say it before me though. But if you're in a prison in your mind, you can't do anything. Has anybody ever had like a just not to get an answer, but more rhetorical, a waking nightmare where you wake up, you can't move, you can't say anything. The rest of your senses haven't kicked in, but your mind is very much so active. Something very terrifying is happening to you. You can't do anything. I mean, but that, and I make that years long, the terror is almost worn off. But you don't start to imagine a beautiful world. I wouldn't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. But you would become very fatigued in your mind. You would start to lose senses of other things in your mind. I don't think it would be a very good thing. I have already heard from my own parents. They say if I'm ever in that situation, you don't think about it. It's not about you. You turn that machine off. But this is just from my sense, and this is the darker side of it. I'm sure somebody else has got a different idea of that, but I would say no. I don't think that is human. I don't think to live like that is human.
Just joined, so I'm gonna move over to Punk.
Yes, hi.
Where are they?
All right. Can y'all hear me?
I'm trying to find it. Where are you
And
listed?
they're at the back,
But I
aren't they?
think,
Oh yeah.
first of all, one thing that is that I can't help but think is that like you mentioned like Helen Keller as if she was like lived an unfulfilled life. You know what I mean? Like as an example, like I think like it's just like a ridiculous, like I don't know. I think that like as far as like that sort of thing, I mean, like I think about Stephen Hawking and like what he's been able to accomplish as like talk about somebody who's just like lost all control of everything. And like I don't know. I think that there's like a little part of me that's like that thinks that that on that sense. Now, if we're talking about somebody who's been in a coma for years and there's no end in sight, I mean, like I think about what you're trying to preserve. If they come back, they're probably not going to be like at 100%. You know, just not functioning for, just not having that sort of function or anything like that. Like, what are you like, and what are you preserving and who are you preserving it for? I think is like the biggest thing. If you're doing, because I think it's like a way of absolving yourself of that sort of
Just message me
of
instead.
of their of take of just, it's a way of avoiding responsibility by saying that they deserve that. But like I think if you're still moving around, I think like as long as you're like moving around and have like control over yourself, I don't think that there's any doubt about it that there's like that's a life that should be preserved. Like if there's any possibility of communication outside of themselves, there's no I don't think that there's any way to justify like killing them. So that's like, I guess that's my idea.
Okay, all right. KJ.
Well, I was thinking, been in this spot before. Who are you keeping that person alive for? And for what reasons? And for what reasons do you want to unplug them? Are they a burden? Is that why you want to unplug? Or if you want to keep them alive, even though they're in a vegetative state, is there hope? Or is it the fact that, you know, people are being greedy and don't want to lose that loved one so soon? Personally, I have DNR orders at the hospital and at my clinic. So if I get in a motorcycle wreck or something happens to me and I'm in that state, I'm not going to be around long. I mean, because orders are, do not plug me, you know, don't even attempt to plug me in, just let me die. But taking care of my mother, watching her decay from cancer, it got down to that last part, and discussing with my dad, what are we doing here, you know? And she was ended up unplugged. I mean, so just what are the true reasons?
why, on both sides of the fence, or is it just because you don't want them to suffer, or you just don't want them to go away? But if there's someone who's in a complete vegetative state, say they had a traumatic brain injury and are brain dead, and those are saying, is that life? I mean, they're showing flat lines across EKGs, they're showing everything. The only thing that's keeping them alive is that resuscitator and a G tube. And personally, I wouldn't want to see a loved one go through that. I'd unplug them, and I definitely wouldn't want to go through that. So that's just all I got to say on the topic.
Pat, are you with us? Nobody's sitting right beside you.
Dead.
Someone might unplug
He
Pat.
actually might be dead.
Oh, boy. It's a shame. All right, JVB.
Hi. Yeah, with the examples of Stephen Hawking and Helen Keller, my God, she had quite a influence. It wasn't even just that people around her were influencing her; she had influence to the outer world. And happy birthday, Stevie Wonder, by the way, today. I think this question is truly about consciousness, and there's many interesting things about then eating a salad. Are you killing lettuce? The stuff in medical things these days with being able to track brain activity, I think is really fascinating. I don't know that much about it, but I think, say, even like 15 years ago, there wasn't the being able to see that there's much going on inside that we can see now, even though we don't have to just check somebody's eyeballs if they're flickering or not, But anyway, those are my two cents. I don't really know. I don't have a summation. That's it.
I'm sorry. Rizan, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Right. I'm sorry. I always mess it up. My bad.
Yeah. So I don't think whether someone gets to live or not, it's something I can decide on their behalf. Like, unless the person is able to communicate with me their desire to either live or die, if I decide to unplug them, then it's mostly going to be for selfish reasons because they became too much of a liability or something. I can't say it is for their sake because I don't know what's going inside their head. Maybe just like KG said, like, if I decide to unplug them, is it going to be because they're too much for me to handle, or is it because they're suffering and I want to end their suffering and not be selfish and keep them for myself? I don't know. Unless I get the feedback of the person, it's difficult to say what is right. I don't think there is a correct answer to this thing.
Okay. All right. Ituza? Ituza?
Aithusa.
Is it Greek? You're muted, by the way. There you go.
I just have to in the correct word, but
There you go. Hello. Can you not
You want to
speak?
speak? I haven't correct the name, right? So,
Yeah, no, their megaphone.
Aithusa?
Right. If you're having technical
She's not there?
difficulty, you can just move on and come back.
okay, Lazarus.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Fantastic.
You're good.
Hello.
Oh, good. Something was wrong with my mic. I'm sorry. Was that too
No
loud
problem.
now?
No, you're good.
Okay. And it's Aithusa. It's from Merlin. It means
Aithusa.
white dragon.
Oh, okay.
But my first question about this is, are there any brain activity like's been mentioned before? If there's any brain activity at all, then if we terminate that life, that's basically just murder in my eyes. But if there is no brain activity, then I guess that the they can be unplugged and their organs and tissues and other items can be used to help more people stay alive and promote better lives for these individuals. I've been in a situation personally where a couple years ago, um, I'm still recovering, but a couple years ago, I passed out for no explainable reason, and I ended up breaking 50 bones in each leg. I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, I was in a wheelchair. I had to go under complete reconstructive surgery of my right leg, ankle, foot, and they had to use cadaver parts on me. And
Hello? Hello?
part hello? They had
Just
to
wait a bit.
Is my mic on?
You could just wait a bit, dude.
Just wait.
they had to use cadaver parts on me, and it's been 2-3 years now. I am not in a wheelchair. I can walk. I can progress. But during that time when I was in the rehabilitation center, I couldn't get out of bed hardly. It was a struggle to do most anything. It was basically being a prisoner in my own mind. I could not do what I wanted to do. But I still had joys and hopes and happinesses and achievements that came my way, even though at times it was very dark and difficult. So I would say if there's any brain activity whatsoever, and it's not a situation like this gentleman's mother, then I think it would be merciful to not do anything. But if there's no brain activity, I think it would be more merciful to send to use them in situations that would benefit other people's lives. That's all I have to say.
Wow.
So in regards to being in a coma, there are cases where people have never woken up and have been unplugged, and there have been cases where people have awakened after many years of being in a coma and continued their life, obviously through rehabilitation or just being a normal human being, not in a coma. But then again, hearing is one of the last senses to deteriorate. To deteriorate. To deteriorate when they're in a coma. So there is that possibility that they can still hear, regardless of if they can't speak or anything. And I'm going to bring up that music video from Metallica's One, the song One. It's got bits from a film called Johnny's Got His Gun or something, where a guy steps on a landmine and loses all his limbs. He can't speak, can't hear, he's lost his sight. He has his ventilator over his face, which is like a bag, so he can't see anything anyway. And he just wants to die, but he can't tell anyone. So everyone's just keeping him alive, but he's telling them, kill me, kill me, kill me, but they can't hear him.
A bunch of people are standing in a circle, sitting on couches, and they're like, it's called like, what the heck?
What?
And then, well, I guess it brings up the debate as to what gives us the right to put down animals as well. They don't have a choice.
Right.
But again, it could be like a merciful thing you could say, but again, they can't say kill me or don't kill me, but we still do it. Why should we do it to humans as well? You know? The end.
Randomly true. You got very morbid. Very somber tune in here.
I mean, so I'll try making it a bit more positive, I guess. I mean, just because someone you can monitor their brain waves and stuff like that, you can't see what's going on in their brains. It's like you can record sleep patterns in like brainwaves as you sleep, but you can't record your dreams. And there have been people who have come out of comas and they've lived like another life just in their head. There are some people who just wake up as if they've just skipped through time. But in that way, if I guess it also depends on the situation. If there's someone who doesn't look like they're going to recover and they're using up all the resources available, and then there's someone who is more likely to recover with the same resources, then I guess, yes, you would turn off the person less likely to recover and use the resources for the people who can. But if it's like an infinite resources and they have brain waves and activity and all that kind of stuff, then yeah, personally I would say to keep them alive unless they wanted to be turned off. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Grimsby.
Okay.
I feel like anytime I say your name, you should be opening a trap door for me.
Yeah. Yeah. My name sounds
Turning
like
on
a
some big
squeak.
machine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think. Well, the thing is, if you're ever in that position, it's never you who actually gets to decide, do I live or do I die? It's everyone around you. So I think the real question around this is, how much of your life is really yours? I mean, how when you say something like, I'm going to take my own life, what you're really saying is, I'm going to take it from everyone around you. You're depriving everyone of the world from you. I'm not saying that there is no circumstance where. Actually, what the fuck am I saying?
You're making a good point.
You can
my
take
point
time to
is,
think it through. Don't worry.
my point is that we as people are very empathetic. We want to help each other. We always want to look for the positive outcome for someone else. And I think sometimes that maybe we may do that even to the what's the word I'm looking for?
Detriment?
Detriment. That's it. Even to the detriment of the other person. So even while another person may want to keep you alive for their own personal reasons, or maybe just because they love you, or maybe just because you're an asset of some kind, you don't really get to make that decision. And well, apart from the fact that sucks, can I think this through for a second?
No problem.
Yeah.
We're about to open up anyways. Just take your time, man.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
The weather, right?
Yeah, I think I'm speaking.
Right. Okay. Cool. All right. So at this point, does anyone want to disagree, agree, elaborate? What's up?
You don't have to raise your hand. It's speak or get spoken over to now. By the way, Razan.
I like the point randomly true brought about resources because I think resources should in a way influence our decision of whether we get to keep someone or not.
2 points. But with the thing about keeping the COVID-19 spike low is so that these hospitals don't get overrun. It's not a cure. It's not it's just so that the sudden overuse of emergency rooms and equipment, then these doctors have had to make decision on who to try to save and who not to try to save. So I mean, this question is important in so many ways, and abortion too. When do you think this is going to have a viable life or not viable life? The other thing I was thinking about is what we're not. What we don't have organs for right now, happening right now. We think we're these really intelligent beings. There's so much more going on in the universe of universes that we're not perceiving. So, perhaps there's somebody up there that's going to go, oh, these humans, oh, my God, growing under the sink again and just, scrub us out. because we don't have the perception, you know.
I always think we're so smart, but we always bite our tongue, you know.
Yeah. God, I wish you could like megaphone people by selecting them. It's such like
like muting them, but like the opposite.
yeah.
I would give
scan
everyone
for free
megaphone all,
pages
and
to
then
find people.
people would use it to drown out each other.
Can
Be
I
annoying.
put my point in real quick before my
Yep, yeah,
internet
yeah.
blows
yeah.
up again? I'm sorry, everybody. My internet is really bad for some reason. But I think really it all comes down to we don't know what consciousness is. We don't have a scientific way to quantify what makes
Right.
something alive. You know, that's why everybody's freaking out about AI right now. Oh no, is it going to become alive? Is it already alive? Who knows what you know, because we have no way of actually saying what life is, you know, quantitatively. So the thing is like if right now, if you can look at an MRI, fMRI, I'm sorry. Well, let's see, fMRI is animated, MRI is a still image. I forgot. Sorry. Basically, if you can look at their brain and see brain activity, then you know we can tell that they are either conscious or they're unconscious but still alive. So it depends on, you know, what do you count as alive? Conscious but still alive. So basically I would say what some others have said here, which if there's brain activity, definitely keep them alive. If there's no brain activity, then I would say it comes down to an individual choice, like KJ was saying. You know, if they had said beforehand what they wanted to do, I think it's up to us to honor that. But that's just me. I know there are a ton of different thoughts on this. But
If you
anyway,
just allow me to respectfully disagree, coming to
Sure.
the fact of, I agree and disagree, kind of in the middle, that AI, I feel like as humans, we have an irrational fear, a fear of, unknown things, of course. Things that scare us. We're like, oh, something new that kind of is scary to us, which is song through history, with, different various things, foreigners and such. When we see things that are different, it frightens us as humans. We don't know how to react to it. So I feel like with the advancement of AI, I feel like that kind of frightens most of, the older generation and the newer generation. People are afraid, oh, if we get AI, is my job going to be secure? Are my kids going to be okay? Is this going to stay the same? I feel like it's a more internal inside of, humans, ourselves, and our instinct is to be kind of protective, over what's ours. And especially the society that we live in today. The society that we live in it's all about him, his, mine. So we're afraid that we're going to lose something that we don't really actually have.
right. I actually completely agree with you, but can I ask what that has to do with someone being, well, actually, it does because I was using it as an example, but uh, someone being conscious or not. Hmm? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Anyway, yeah, I agree. People are driven by fear, but I think we're starting to step on rule. Is it 5?
4.
Respect when a topic is done. Territory. So, yeah, I'll move on.
Right.
I'm gonna go to a tangent.
yeah. We like to talk about hypotheticals, but you get to the point where like, what if this? What if that? What if that? All that. So, right before I get into the next one, I just want to do like a little bit of a plug. Kind of not really a plug. Like, there's these signs across the room that lead to our Discord and to our Twitter and our YouTube. This event is recorded and will be put up as sort of a pseudo podcast that you can listen to and, debate people in your head and, think, oh, that person's opinion is wrong, or wish I could have spoken to them about it and all that. And the Discord is how we actually come up with questions, how we decide, like this question good, is that question good? You can submit them, you can give ideas, tell me you want, the roof to be on here and all that, and I can work with it and all that. Reach out to me directly or be on the server and all that. And then the Twitter is just I'm trying to work on like putting announcements on it and putting like if something is changing about it and all that. So if just if you want to be more of a part of it and all that, we've been doing this for a while, so I seem to is justified. But right, if you just joined, welcome to Real Talk. The situation is I bring up a question, topic, philosophy, legal conundrum, ethical dilemma, and we go around this circle abiding by these rules, getting everyone's opinions, philosophies, and experiences on them. Rule number 1, 2-minute rule, try to keep your point under 2 minutes. Just as a basic rule while we're going through the circle. We will open up after, and it will be just, sorry, I really forgot what I said. It'll just be more efficient, just 2 minutes. You don't have to I'm not timing you, but I will remind you. And rule number 2, respect the circle, meaning don't try to interrupt someone or argue with them or debate them while they're trying to make their point. Rule number 3, ask up in the God door, meaning if you want to talk about a religious topic, you're welcome to just ask if the group is comfortable with that, and we can move from there. Rule number 4, respect when the topic is over, meaning if either there's a lull in the conversation, nobody's really talking, or I'm trying to move on, you got to move on with me because of time constraint. Just move on with us. And rule number 5, shut up when needed, because needed is often. Right. So the next question is very opinionated. There's no definite answer on it. It's and it may be a little, triggering. So if anyone wants to, say, that's a terrible question, it's okay. But the question is self-inflicting harm ethically wrong? Wrong if you only hurt yourself. Aaron.
Can you I'm sorry, can you give me an example? I'm kind of like my brain is like all the conversations. It's kind of stuck right now.
Oh yeah. Right, Zach, are you with us?
Yes, sorry, I'm just thinking it through in my head. Did you want me to go, or what was happening? Yeah. Oh, crap. Okay. Well, a lot of people have different sets of morals, so I think it depends on the person not opening the God door, but possibly religion or beliefs or anything based off that. But in general, I would say it would be ethically wrong, because generally inducing harm on yourself will bring about negative emotions and it won't be pleasant, which is something you kind of want to avoid in life. So for like grieving, for example, kind of a process you have to go through. But in general, I would say it's probably ethically wrong. I think there's always going to be an exception, but yeah, you don't want to be causing harm to yourself, and then I'm sure others won't rejoice in the fact that you're being harmful to yourself either. So it won't just affect you, even if you only think it will.
Okay. Right. My hero.
I do think
My
there is a
hero.
Yep.
Jesus.
I do think
my
there
bad.
is a difference because obviously you can't go to jail for like cutting yourself, but if you cut someone else, that's a really serious problem. So there is a difference, especially in the eyes of the law. But in my own opinion, I kind of have some, or have had. I think I'm pretty good now, but I had some kind of self-esteem issues and stuff that I was able to overcome just by thinking of myself as somebody else. And like, I'm so hard on myself. I'm constantly thinking bad about myself. Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? I wish I, were this or that. Well, if I said that to someone else, they'd be really pissed off at me and I'd be really abusive and mean towards that person. And I don't do that. Like I generally try to be nice to other people. So why can't I be nice to myself as if I were someone else? So I think there is a distinction there between how you treat someone and someone else, and in the eyes of the law, at least, it is not quite as immoral to do something to yourself as it would be to somebody else. But I think you're better off treating yourself the same way you would treat others.
Okay, all right.
Mr.
Finn?
In the case of self harm and whether it's wrong, I really don't think I have anywhere near enough experience even to make like a qualified opinion. Is it okay if I just like pass? I don't think I I should make an opinion. You know, I don't think I'm enough. Please.
Well, it's not only in the sense of like physically harming yourself. I mean, like to be self-detrimental. Is that ethically bad? Like, you know, not going for a job interview. You know, all that.
Then I don't know. I can pick it up on the next one though. But that's yeah. But thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big Ray.
So waiting consent. You're muted.
Consent is key.
Who's this called anyway?
You with us?
You okay?
Hi, I'm
There we
new.
go.
I actually just
Hi, new.
jumped on
Oh,
real
who's that?
quick. I haven't even created my avatar yet, but this is kind of fitting anyways. And I missed the question, honestly. I will probably jump in on next round.
Okay. All right. Matthew.
So sometimes when so I think it is wrong because you're self-harming yourself. It ain't good. Like
Okay.
if it's just stress, you can relieve it by getting those those little stress balls that you like squeeze. Like it's like that, but different.
All right, man. Keto King.
Where'd he go? I just had him. There he is.
Keto. How do you spell keto? Like the diet? Keto.
Oh, it's the.
I think it's
The diet has a E.
keto.
Keto diet,
Right.
ketogenic.
You with us?
Is he there?
Well, he's megaphoned. So nope, he's not. Nope. What's going on with his mic?
He's eating carbs.
I thought keto was when you avoid carbs.
Keto is when you you stay away from non-complex sugars and force your body to produce ketones so you can help break down your fat and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Also, it won't let me megaphone Pat Shark, so someone else is going to have to.
I think Pat Stock has been gone. He's been sitting in that position for a while, so I think someone unplugged him. So right, JVB.
This is this question. I think really comes right up to the edge of existence. To be or not to be, and whether somebody, if somebody, as earlier, somebody on my left side of the sofa brought up before, how much of your life is your own when it's really your experience is actually impacting experiences all around you. So even though you might be in a lot of pain and you take yourself out, your parent or your child could suffer. Maybe if you could absolutely could see that there was more suffering by you removing yourself. So do you have a social responsibility to keep going? That's what I think it really is, because the ethics and morality that I think can be debated, but the social thing, how does it impact? And then does it, and what Matthew said, there's a lot of, I think, to absolute merit to what Matthew said. Again, and it's that simplicity, that spark of being on this side of existence, being alive, is its own reason for continuing. Yeah, I'm just making his answer sound much more, complicated than it was, but with the simplicity of it was so beautiful. If you hurt yourself, that's a bad thing. Yeah, there you go. So. Yeah, I just have more questions about this. I don't certainly have any answers. When I am thinking when I'm afraid of death or thinking death would be a solution to something, it makes me wonder what's so scary about death after all. And if death is not scary, why not just end it as opposed to continuing on? And I think until I know the answer to that, I'm going to continue on. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks.
Athusa. I already forgot how to say it. My bad. Ithusa. My bad.
I can apple.
Well, I'm not so sure how ethics would play into this, as it's a personal decision. I know that cutting, not going to job interviews, self-medicating, all of that stuff actually does have a social impact on everyone around you. However, the main reason why people start self-medicating, cutting, other such things, subconsciously destroying their own lives in whatever matter, is because they are sad. They've had some sort of trauma, some sort of ordeal in their life that they don't know how to mentally process it. And in order to let go of some of that pent up pain that's inside of their body, they cut. And for a little bit of time, when they cut, it actually releases a chemical inside your body. I believe it's endorphins that help you feel better for a little bit of time. And I don't think it's good to cut. I don't think it's good to self sabotage. But when somebody is so sad, depressed, and hurt in so many different ways, sometimes that's the only way they can even live another day. And I'm not so sure if it's wrong or right. It's just sad to me. That's all I have to say.
Right. Ash.
It's a very loaded question. I think, yeah, a part of it comes from mental illness, and I think when you talk about that, how ethics plays into the way somebody's brain is working, that's hard. I mean, even when you mentioned going on a job interview or, not going, that can all be part of depression. And if that's ethical, I guess I don't know. I can't see people's names. I don't really have any answers, just more, I don't know. My father committed suicide when I was 2. So the ethics there, I think, mental illness, I definitely can, it's definitely affected my life in many ways. But I don't think he was being unethical. I think he was sick. So I don't know. I know it wasn't just about, death and loss and everything. It, like I said, was so loaded. So
Measures.
All right. If you think my last question was morbid, this is so self-harming is a pleasurable yet destructive addiction, just as alcohol is or smoking is destructive, but you do something. And when I was 15, I was in a really dark place in my mind, and I used to self-harm a lot, and I drugged myself and ended up drowning myself in the bath and actually died for about 5 minutes until they resuscitated me in the ambulance. And I spent 3 months in the mental institute in Wales, at the place Wales. And yeah, you recovered from that, and well, not fully since, but a lot better since then. But yeah, everyone regrets this kind of thing in the end, but it's all to do with mental. It's all in the mind. I don't know. Yeah. lost my train of thought, but
No problem, man.
next.
Can I ask?
Welcome back. Good to see you.
We gotta. I'm sorry, but we gotta run through the circle before we can open up. Just makes it easier. Right. Randomly true.
Sorry, I completely lost my thought. I was trying to hold in a cough, and I was like, "Oh wait, I'm not muted." Oh wait, so is it morally wrong to self-harm? So I think it depends on the, I guess, the effect it has on the people around you or just your environment. Because I mean, self-harm could be anything from overeating and, becoming overweight and killing yourself slowly that way, or smoking, or anything. Like, it doesn't just have to be cutting or self-harm. So I think if it's only affecting you, I don't think it's morally wrong. I mean, it's bad, obviously. But if someone cuts their knee or something like that, it doesn't have an impact on anyone around them unless someone saw it and then it increases their stress. But if it's something like overdosing, then obviously that takes up resources in a hospital. If you're overeating and then I don't know, you get diabetes, then obviously that's a whole bunch of medicine that you then have to take. And then that comes from somewhere, and like the money it takes for that and toll on family. So yeah, I think if it affects people around you, then it is morally wrong. And if it's just affecting yourself, then it isn't.
Be
quiet,
Mark.
Yeah, Mark.
All right.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Who the hell's Mark?
That was out of nowhere.
Mark's out all the time. There you go.
Looking
There
around
you
for
go.
Mark,
Let's
I'm
shake
not
off the
seeing
morbidity there.
Okay. To bring the tone down again.
No, I'm not joking.
So, I think when we think of something as thanks. I think when we think of something as moral, I think we try to think of it in terms of how much suffering are we causing, and if we think about that, then we really need to think about. I don't know if this is the right way to word this, but do we value our own suffering?
This is Mark.
I can't
Apparently
mute
so.
him. He's already apparently muted. I can't do anything. I don't.
He's
Is he good?
through the mute.
His window is open so we can hear him just because he's amplifying his voice around the world.
That's what it is.
So
Hey, at least I'm sure my point is not going in the YouTube video.
He's fine.
As long it's not like that was recorded or anything. It's whatever.
Oh,
God no.
All right. Good. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah. Okay. So I'm pretty sure this isn't the right way to word this, but do we value our own suffering? As in, do we think that?
Sorry.
All right. Do we think that if suffering really matters if it's happening to us? Because I know a lot of people who will do a lot of horrible things to themselves, but think it's absolutely all right just because it's themselves. They don't, as long as they're not hurting anybody, as long as if it's just them, it doesn't really matter. I personally disagree. I think that you matter, if only to yourself, and that you should preserve yourself. Sorry, I just cut out there. Yeah. Don't do it. It's not wrong, but you shouldn't do it. I'm looking at you.
Ooh, pointing your fingers already.
All right, raise on.
Just to kind of echo what
Aithuza and randomly said. I think ethics is mainly concerned with our relationship with other living beings. So whatever we decide to do with ourselves is outside the scope of morality. I wouldn't say it's moral or immoral to harm oneself. However, one could argue that it's, for example, an extremely inefficient method of achieving a goal if that goal was stress relief or finding a job.
No.
Wow. Yeah. So I don't know. It depends on what do you define as harm, and that's a really wide. I mean, you could go anywhere from you think negatively for half a second. You know, if someone defined like harming themselves as having a bad thought, right? We would be in a super authoritarian, like, you know,
Right.
thought police style worlds. But then also if you know, leave the door wide open to, oh, you only define negativity as like on the verge of like, you know, stabbing yourself in the head or something like that's, you know, that's going way too far the other way. So um I think you I don't know. Honestly, I feel like whoever it was that wanted to skip, I think I'm gonna skip this one because it's. I don't know that I have a concise message on this one.
Right. Does anyone? Now it's time when we open up. Does anyone want to disagree, agree, or elaborate?
Can I just elaborate this to point out? I think it was really incredible for Lazarus to tell us what his personal experience was. The fact that he did self harm and spend time in mental institution, that was really brave. I mean, I know we're in VR, but like that, I really felt that, man. I didn't want to, obviously, nobody interrupts whenever anybody's making a point and stuff, but I'm not going to make any points here. I'm just going to say that was really cool, man. That was, yeah. Hey, thanks. Thank you for sharing that. I know that must have been freaking even hard, even in this, you know? Yeah, just definitely wanted to just point on that. That's cool. That was cool.
I would say
Yeah,
there
and
is.
the ethical,
yeah. Oh,
the ethical moral. Mark.
Yeah, Mark.
Mark. All right. Yeah, you could.
The point about mental health, that it's not, you know, it's really not a decision. So they're there for the morality and the ethics of it. When it comes down to that, if somebody is so distraught that they are willing to take a chance on things never ever realistically coming out of anything, and they succeed, it's not a decision. I don't think when it comes to it's a mental health issue.
I would like to kind of elaborate and maybe pose a question. Being that we're in the middle of a pandemic, I see a lot of people, like the debate or question, especially I'm in the US, people don't want to wear their masks and go out in public, and they're just kind of like, well, it's my health. If, you know, I get sick, then I get sick. How do you guys think that kind of plays into morale and you know what we're discussing here?
I think that plays into education. You know,
Yeah.
more than morality, because they clearly haven't been taught how to consider other people,
Right.
or they haven't been taught how disease spread or how,
right,
you know, basic stuff. That's not. I don't think they actually want to do harm to others. I think they're
that would
trying
come
to
down
stop
to
harm being
intent,
done
though,
from
wouldn't
them, and they say again.
Wouldn't that come down to intent? If they had that knowledge and did it anyway, versus if they just didn't know and were oblivious. Like, I think
Yeah, I think it's what they believe is that they're protecting their rights as a human. They don't have the like the knowledge or education of, you know, disease spreading, or how it's actually protecting other people and why it's necessary. I don't. If people are intentionally doing it to cause havoc and harm, they are horrible people, and I don't. I wouldn't mind if they just disappeared. But
Yeah, it's something I've really been, I'm listening to a lot of social media, and I'm listening to all sides of what people are saying, I guess trying to be uh, empathetic with people that say that masks make their asthma flare up, or they're claustrophobic, or whatever other thing. But I'm like, yeah, it just seemed like this. Like I should pose it to you guys to get your thoughts and opinions on it, because it's been something that's really been. I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. For the greater good of everybody else and the greater good of everybody's health, huh?
I solely think it is just poor education.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Well, and circle of concern, I think. Right? Because that's the same thing with the previous conversation of someone harming themselves intentionally. Like, if they only care about themselves and they think that that's a benefit to them, whether they're right or wrong, which they most certainly are wrong in that moment, but they don't think that at the time. If they are only concerned about themselves and they don't, like, if it does harm their families emotionally, but they're not concerned about that, then that means they are ultimately selfish and only thinking about themselves, which I'm not saying positive or negative. I'm just saying, like, it depends on what level of society are you thinking about. Like, people have mentioned resource consumption, that's at a larger level of, like, the whole society and what money or resources you use. Whereas, if you're only thinking individualistically, then you're not thinking about that. So, and I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. I'm just saying, I think that's something to consider. I don't know. I'm apologizing.
That's exactly what I was talking about before. It's egocentric ignorance, or ignorant egocentric.
Two people speaking at the same time.
Two people speaking at the same time.
Yeah. There's a weird thing where, like, we're just far enough apart that you can't hear each other. So that's why I try to amplify people when they start speaking.
Yeah, I was trying to find the other guy. Oh, is it not Patrick?
Go ahead and talk. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Is it Ruby?
Anthony?
Okay, yeah.
So it's my turn to talk.
Can we raise our hand if you're
Oh,
talking?
okay.
I haven't.
Yeah, I just megaphoned you.
All right. I think that it's like kind of goes into an old human instinct where it's the self versus the tribe kind of thing, where you guys are talking about the concern for others versus the concern for the self.
Exactly.
Which really, when it comes down to survival instinct, there's two things with humans. You either are the self-preserving, where you're individually concerned for yourself, or you're a groupthink where you're more concerned with the tribe, right? So there are people who would see the tribe more as a way to preserve themselves, right? Where there are others who want to contribute to the tribe and preserve the tribe and see the tribe make more generations, right? There are some who live in the now who they don't care about having children, what the fuck ever. It's a life of hedonism. They want the maximum of their individual life. They don't give a fuck if you die. They don't care if your children die, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's the other people who they're worried about everybody. They're the people who hold the door open for you, who are worried about you and all the time. The people who ask if you slept tonight, all that stuff. Those kind of people in your life. They're rare, but you run into them. They're more rare than the other kind of person, and that's why you have all these problems where people don't want to wear their masks. Conditioning. I mean, how many wars have been fought over this idea? Think of the country we live in, and
you guys were talking about like American rights and stuff with like individual values and freedom and stuff. Like I said, wars were fought over these ideas, and there's people who, they run away from cities because they want to have individual. There's people who go to the tribe because they want to live in groups like that. It's just a basic human principle. But go ahead, guys. You can have your input now. I'm done rambling.
Can anyone hear me? Because it seems like I'm
Yeah, you're
talking.
microphoned. Everyone should be able to hear you.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Better.
Hey, how's everybody
It's
doing
just
today?
on the
Hi,
most
you wanna take a
recent
seat?
point.
How do I get
I
over
think there's a difference between what someone's mentioned, like intentionally harming other people, and then there's what I'm defining as ignorant egocentrism or
Right.
egocentric ignorance. So, like, basically, it's you're only interested in yourself, but it's not because of any sort of malicious intent, but just simply because you're ignorant of anything else. So it's not really it's not malicious in nature, but it's a fact. It's a consequence of ignorance. And the second point that I wanted to make was going back to the self thing. From what I gathered, the main point was
Please
everyone
take a
was
seat.
talking about self harm in order to feel something. I would just like to propose like the contra to that. I'm a 3-tour combat veteran, and it's kind of the opposite for me. It's like I drink, but which is technically self-harm, but it's not to feel something, but it's to feel nothing. So it's kind of the opposite, but it's still self-harm.
Huh, yeah.
I think, so if I may, I know you called on me
That's
earlier, but I think it depends on what level of hurt you're talking about. For example, I love watching UFC fighters.
There are so many levels.
Yes, and so when they fight, yeah, when they're hitting themselves and blood and it's gushing all over the place, and the fighter's being knocked out, and that I enjoy that type of combat, and I think they also enjoy it too, for the benefit of themselves, for the benefit of society. I think it depends on what reason people harm themselves or put themselves in harm's way. And I think in terms of sports, them hurting themselves, it's proper, it's okay, and it's accepted by society.
Well,
That's
I'm
my take on that.
more about like something like PTSS, like self-harm, intentionally self-harm, but you do self-harm, feeling nothing. You want to feel nothing because you feel too much.
Sure. No, I wasn't defending, what you were saying or giving my opinion about what you were saying. I was just talking in general about sports and why people do that type of stuff.
Right.
I think the two are related because, with fighting, people do tend to disassociate. I think Mike Tyson, he's making his comeback recently. If you've seen in the news, funny guy, great fighter. But whenever he talks about fighting, if you've ever heard about it, with his wisdom, he's a completely different person when he's fighting than whenever he's being, just your friend Mike Tyson. It's a completely different level where you feel nothing. You just want to destroy. You want to punch through the enemy, and it's a different kind of way of numbing yourself. Of where instead of I guess with alcohol, you want to. It's a different kind of numb, for sure.
But I don't.
But
I wouldn't come.
But I guess Mike knows about that too, because he had a lot of alcohol problems as well.
To warfare.
There goes my hand.
Like actually,
getting shot at's different. I mean, those are completely different levels of things.
We're getting a bit off topic.
With numbing yourself with that too, like I said, with the fighting, Mike Tyson also done that as well with the heavy alcoholism and the wanting to destroy.
Yes,
they go hand in hand.
Is it a subconscious thing, or is it like
Right.
intentional.
Well, I think you could sum that
That's
whole
the question.
argument up by saying one person's harm is another person's help. So it's all, relative to.
By distracting yourself with the pain of others, it elevates yourself.
Right.
Are we getting on to like the fourth point? Not the fourth, the one where we're kind of getting a bit off, like a little bit off point, or
yeah, I think so.
Go.
Should we kind of?
Rule number 4.
Okay.
Ron? Yeah, I'm ready.
How much time
Four,
do you
right?
got left?
But yeah, we only have about 4 minutes left, but so I'm gonna explain something real quick. So
This has to end.
yes, this
Oh,
has
yeah.
to end.
I
We
know,
once
right?
done
We
it
gotta
for
host this
longer.
shit and stuff.
What?
Yeah, and I can
The
hop
meeting
in
of
if you
mortals.
want. I said no, but I don't know. I'm more awake now, so.
They just
wanna-
popped in
Yeah,
in the
no,
last
go for
20
it.
minutes.
Right. So, the event is just about 3 minutes out of leaving, so I don't have time to ask another question. Not that I wouldn't love to stick around and listen to everyone's experiences and stuff, but I have been in this headset for 2 hours straight.
Yeah, the bus battery's dying.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna have to excuse myself, but so this event has been recorded, and it will be on that YouTube channel that's up there for if you want to watch yourself and you see like your mannerisms while you're trying to debate or come out with your argument, and or maybe you missed this one. And then you can reach out to us on our Discord. If you friend me on Discord, I'll add you to the server. I feel like there's a better way to do it, but I have not figured it out yet. So yeah, and then on the Twitter, I've been that's for like updates and stuff on like what's going on, say if I can't make it and all that. But yeah, we do this every Wednesday and Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is about like what midnight Europe
Yeah.
to like
Midnight.
2 a.m. 3 a.m.
Oh yeah, midnight to 2 a.m. for UK time.
Too. Yeah. I apply, so right now, one of my mods is going to take over. He has a list of the questions and also questions he can ask himself. Yeah, thank you guys for coming to the first featured Real Talk. It's been a pleasure. Adios.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you for hosting.
Nice one.
I fucked my controller. There we go.
I like that he left like he was actually on a stage. That was quite classy,
Oh, I'm still here.
He's just-
I can hear you.
Yeah, he's just
Come
cutting
on,
down.
man. You gotta
He's just
leave with some
behind the
style.
Iron Curtain.
You gotta leave with some style.
It's beyond the fourth wall.
That was.
You gonna take
Oh,
some
look, he's
to
back. It's an encore. It's an encore. Right?
I was waiting for
Yeah,
you
class.
want to talk bad about me or anything. I was
Who
waiting for
is
that.
fucking man?
Rush him, man.
Must go.
I think everyone's open mic right now. It's so hard to tell who's fucking the microphone.
That's
I'm
the end of the
just
show.
gonna
Everybody's just
unmegaphone
talking.
everyone. I'm sorry if you get muted. It happens when you get on megaphone. It kind of sucks. But
I guess we can just
Yeah,
talk.
it's. Yeah, I was going to read some questions, but I don't have to. We could just talk. It's up to you guys.
Yeah.
We're totally free at this point, so whatever you guys want to do.
anarchy.
I'm game.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's a
I
wrap.
came late, so.
I've been holding back from my epic debating skills. I can't
just
rub my hands
Debating?
together. Damn it.
Thing.
It's more of a discussion. What's that guy doing?
I wanted to see if the globe would spin, and now was the best
Hello?
time.
No, we had all assets like being cut out of this world now.
Yeah, we used to
He's
have a
still
cat
recording.
named Diogenes sitting on the
Diogenes.
couch there, but we had
We
to
also
get
had
rid of him.
Apollo, didn't we? We had Apollo like right at the
Get to,
back, I think.
you don't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Is he still
too good.
recording this? What's going on with it?
I mean, possibly.
No, I think. Well, he said he stopped. I don't know how you can actually tell if it's going or not. I think.
I think only
he
he
said-
can.
Yeah.
The 8
Well, it's
discovery
here.
fire.
It'd be funny if this is on the footage, just everybody converging on the camera.
Everyone group photo.
Say cheese.
I don't know. Some people have dignity and just kept their seats.
So, okay,
Yeah,
so
good
here's
job,
my
Mr.
theory.